Hello, good morning. My name is Robert Schmid, also known as Mr. IoT. I'm the Chief IoT Technologist for Deloitte with a deep passion for all things digital. This week on Coffee with Miss Connected and Mr. IoT, we're missing Kelsey, but we have Justin Bundick. Justin runs data science at Southwest. Can I say that's my favorite airline, or would that be not fair to the other airlines? Do you think?
I think that'd be okay.
Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You and I work together. Thank you for making time.
Absolutely.
Data science.
Yes, sir.
What do you do?
So I help to lead the data science practice here at Southwest Airlines. I've been in this role for a couple of years now. We started to really invest heavily in data science in the last several years, really to create a competitive advantage when it comes to Southwest and what we're doing at the airline.
So what I'm hearing you say is you make my travel better through data and through data science. Is that what you're saying?
That is absolutely true. You know, when it comes to an airline like Southwest, we've been investing in data science, or at least optimization research, for many, many years. And what we're trying to do now is really use data and the patterns that are formed in that data to try to make our operation more efficient, try to make our customer experience a lot better, and try to make back office functions such as planning more accurate and reliable, which I think overall just makes the experience of flying more effective and really helps our customers to have a great experience. And really try to differentiate our brand and our product from our competitors.
So Justin, you and I have worked on a variety of different projects together. Oh, by the way, I just got feedback. For some reason, we can only see you on one camera. The other one is black. So maybe what you want to do is just turn one of your computers a little bit to, yeah, that's perfect. Look at this one. That's awesome.
That's it? Okay. I didn't realize it was using this camera. I apologize.
You know, actually, the other one we can hear you on, and this one we can see you. It's kind of
That's fine.
So, what I was going to say is we work together, and I'm actually not entirely sure which ones of the project we work together we can talk about and which ones we can't. But I'm just really, can you give us some examples? I mean, you know, I do Internet of Things, you do data science. We kind of really meet. I don't think you can live without us. We can't live without you if I sort of like put you into data science and me into the Internet of Things bucket. But where do we meet? Yeah. What do we do together? Give us or give us a couple examples. What's exactly going on with the data you collect?
Yeah, so look, when it comes to data science, obviously the fuel of any model that we're building is data. And if you look at it at a high level, I think of data in two different buckets. First is data that you get from transactional systems that you interact with, our reservation system, when you get to the airport and start interacting with our day of operations systems. And that data is very, very robust, especially for an airline like Southwest. We've been collecting that data forever, at least for the last 2 to 3 decades. But where we start to really lose a lot of visibility is what I would call sensory level data. And that's where I think IoT and data science really cross. And there's a lot of information that can be gathered by embedding sensors into our operation, both above the wing and below the wing, to create data around interactions, not just transactions with systems. And I think that those interactions are very, very important for data science in general moving forward, because without those patterns, it is very hard for us to be able to recreate, from a data perspective, a digital twin, so to speak, of what our airline is looking like. And there is so much interaction going on in the daily operation that it's paramount for a company like Southwest to really be investing in IoT for the specific reason of creating data, both real-time data that can help you in real-time alerting, but also in storing that type of interactive data so that we can look at those patterns, study those patterns, and try to help us make a more effective airline moving forward.
I have to say, one of the things that I always find amazing working together is the depth of analysis and the learnings we have, right? Because one of the things that I have learned over time is asking someone what they do and asking a group of people what they do, then actually see what really happens with a sample of people is often different. Do you have some good examples of that happening? Is that your experience too, or what do you think about that?
Give me an example of what you mean. I'm maybe I'm not following your question.
So when I talk about when you ask people about their habits, they tell you one thing about their habits because they truly believe that's their habit. And then when you actually observe habits, like across people, not individually, but across people, the results actually turn out differently.
Oh yeah, and you see that a lot. I'm going to break it down and actually take it from a continuous improvement or Lean Six Sigma lens. One of the really great things that I've learned from a sister team that we have in our corporate strategy group, our CI group, is the fact that if you go and observe over a period of time, even annually, processes over and over again, you'll find that actions sometimes deviate from what people think that they're doing. And you see that in a lot of those types of studies. So if you embed sensors in those types of processes, you can really start to gather a range of data, and not just the most likely outcome, but a range of outcomes and their probability, which is, I think, where data science really plays such a massive role. And we see that all over, from walking patterns to process flows and the amount of time it actually takes for a particular process to happen. And looking at that across the data spectrum is really a unique and interesting part of data science, I think.
So I have a specific question for you. One of the things, and I'm wondering if you have data about this, but one of the things I've always enjoyed when I walk into San Francisco airport, one particular airline had music playing at their check-in. And I always go in there and I get all upbeat and chipper and so forth. And I was surprised that not more people are doing this. Do you have any actual data that tells you if music has an impact on how people perceive travel?
Yeah, and actually I'm going to go a step further. In our Dallas airport right now at 2 gates, we actually are testing the use of music in the boarding process. Because we do see that music, and actually, if you just look anecdotally, there are a lot of studies in academia that talk about, especially in health, that if you play music at a certain beats per minute, that it actually will influence the speed of your actions. I don't know, many of those that are probably watching right now, if you go on Spotify or any of these other music apps, you can actually set a running pace and find music for that running pace. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that running pace keeps you on track and keeps you on pace. And so we're actually testing that out right now in Dallas in partnership with our innovation team inside of corporate strategy. We are actually playing music in the jet bridges and looking at the pace of boarding in those 2 jet bridges versus jet bridges where we don't have music. And are actually collecting that data.
I'm gonna out myself here. I love listening to Barry White, and that puts me at a certain age and music bracket. What music do you love listening to? And then secondly, I have a follow-up question to this. I know Heather is quite eclectic in many things. How do you guys decide on music? Heather leads the innovation department, by the way, in case for the people who are listening in, and we work together a lot, so we have a good laugh. So what music do you like to listen to, and how do you and Heather decide on music?
You know, music for me is what I'm doing at the time. So if I'm running or exercising, I'm usually listening to something in the EDM spectrum, some type of dance music, just to keep my pace up. But when I'm wanting to focus, I typically am listening to jazz or choral or symphonic music. You may not know this, Robert, but I'm actually a classically trained vocalist. And so my music spectrum and my joy of music actually spans a lot of different spectrums, and it really depends on what I'm doing and what mood I'm in. And when it comes to picking music from a Southwest perspective, we actually have a group that manages that in our marketing department, and they've worked with a third-party provider to really set up a set of playlists. And depending on the time of day and the airport that you're in, you might experience a different playlist. And there's a lot of research that they put into that, a lot of work that they do with outside groups, as well as with academic research.
Well, I have to tell you, I knew about this, and I even saw you sing at Heather's husband's party, if you remember.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
anyhow, yeah, thank you for that. So you talked about at Dallas Love Field how there's 2 gates with music now. So when people walk around, I'm curious actually not just how it affects the boarding pass, but I wonder if it attracts people from other gates to congregate around it. But it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, that will be.
Check it out.
That's true.
What other things are we doing around innovation at your innovation airports? I know you have declared certain airports innovation airports. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this. And it's interesting because I think there is something for people to learn how to do innovation. I think you guys are doing an amazing job at that.
Yeah, and I know from a data science perspective, we've adopted a lot of what Heather's done in the innovation space. So the way we approach innovation is extreme testing and experimentation, right? So we start with concepts and convert those into small tests or mock-ups that we can test outside of the operation itself in a lab environment. And then we move to small prototypes that we can test out with small groups of individuals. And then move into where we pilot it across some of our innovation airports, and then try to scale that over time once we get a broad spectrum of learnings from the experiments that we're doing. And we do this very similar approach when it comes to data science modeling and building of models. We will experiment across multiple phases until we get to the models that we like. When it comes to data science and the use of data science and some of our experiments, the ones that I'm happy to talk about right now, we're actually using video detection right now in an experiment at Dallas Love Field to try to understand the pace and movement of our passengers in that boarding process, as we talked about, as well as to capture the number of carry-on bags that we're bringing onto the airline. And part of that is around creating data around the turn process, because it's so important for Southwest as an airline to be able to turn our aircraft as quickly as possible. Herc Kelleher used to joke that we weren't making money unless a plane was in the air. So the faster we can get into the air by turning that plane as fast as we can and as safely as we can is best. So understanding that process is extremely important, because boarding is completely around interaction. There are no transactional systems involved once you start walking into the plane itself. And so understanding all of the various parts of the turn and creating data around all those parts of the turn is extremely important for us as data scientists in order to understand the patterns of what's going on in the turn process. So that's one of the big areas of focus from a data science perspective. From an innovation perspective, I'll speak a little bit on Heather's team's behalf. They did a very large pilot and prototype at the end of last year around digital signage in the airport and being able to utilize that signage to help customers better navigate the airport itself, and to understand where they're going and where they need to go, and how much time they need to be able to get there, to try to make that part of the process more customer friendly and customer focused.
Well, I gotta tell you, it helps me too. The faster we get up in the air, the faster we get there. So thank you for doing that.
Exactly.
By the way, you're just joining us. I'm Robert Schmid, the Chief IoT Technologist for Deloitte, and you're watching Coffee with Miss Connected and Mr. IoT. And today we're talking to Justin Bundick, data scientist at Southwest Airlines. So, Justin, I have a question for you, and it comes up every time. So I'm gonna just preempt from other people thinking about this. But you talked about video analytics, and so I got to talk about privacy. And I know data gets anonymized, and I get it, but where's sort of the line? I feel like, for example, for me, I'm fairly open with what I share, but where do you draw the line, and how do you ensure privacy, and what do you do about this? Because I know you spend a lot of time on that, and there's a lot of testing that goes into this, but it'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, privacy is extremely important. And the approach that we're taking at Southwest at this point is to try to do these types of edge computing and data creation projects without particularly getting into identification of people or trying to identify or track people. That's not something that we're wanting to go into, mainly because we're trying to be very cognizant of privacy and trying to be cognizant of our customers and their privacy, and our employees and their privacy. But I do think that there's a lot of benefit in object tracking and understanding processes when it comes to things like suitcases and other items, where we can create data without crossing a privacy threshold, and trying to create data without storing particularly private information or information that we think would cross the line from into privacy and being able to identify people or anything like that. That's one thing that it's a stark line that we really try to never cross. And it's a policy that we have in place at Southwest. So hopefully that somewhat answers your question.
That's awesome. Thank you. What did you do to get into data science? I'm just curious. Are you a master beside a classically trained vocalist?
Yeah, so I have an interesting path into the space that I'm in right now. I actually started, I'm a finance background as far as my college degree, but I moved into data and the data space in the early 2000s into an emerging discipline at Southwest around business performance reporting and enterprise performance management. So using data to create key performance indicators and using those indicators to help better manage the company. And I helped to mature that discipline at Southwest over many, many years, and started to utilize data science to help us better predict what we think performance would look like for the airline based off of the plans that we were making. And so that really started helping us to better understand the use of data science and where we could start to use it. And then about 3 years ago, our current president, Tom Nealon, came into Southwest Airlines and started to create what is currently the Corporate Strategy and Innovation Group. And that group has a couple of key elements. First is just traditional strategy. And then we have innovation, as I mentioned earlier, in that group. We have the data science group, my team, as well as continuous improvement. And those are all areas that Tom believes, and we believe as a company, are very important for us as an airline in order to be competitive in the future. And so we're investing heavily in those areas. And what's interesting about this is you would think, man, those are four very distinct disciplines. But man, they work, our teams work together constantly. Between Heather's innovation team and my team, between our continuous improvement team and my team, obviously strategy influencing that. It's really an interesting mixture. And so when Tom came in, he asked me to really step up and try to build and mature the capability of data science as I had done for performance management many, many years ago. And so I've jumped headfirst into that, have a very robust team. And we have two main areas that we focus. First is building a capability for the company. So at Southwest, data science is a federated model. So we have, at least in our major departments, teams that are embedded in that department doing data science specifically for those types of problems. But we also have my central team who's doing a lot of cross-functional work that might cross over multiple departments, as well as a lot of R&D that's more strategically focused. So that way, if we're doing projects and building capabilities that we may not need as an airline for 5 or 10 years, my team's focused on a lot of that. So building the capability is one thing. Doing projects on my team itself is another focus, mainly on those cross-functional large projects as well as R&D. And then we're doing a lot of work for smaller departments that don't have a data science practice, but do have a demand and a need for data science, almost like an internal consulting team.
That's awesome. Thank you, Justin. I just enjoy working with you and your team. It's just you guys are.
We've had a lot of fun and continue to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we do. So the time always flies like crazy, and we have like time for one more question. And I'm gonna go out on a limb with you, and we'll see how far you go with me. And there's maybe two answers to this, but let's look out a little bit. Let's look forward, right? What do you see? Where do you see air travel go what would you like to see change and improve? And what do you sort of like foresee is going to happen? And, you know, this is much less about this is what Southwest is going to do, and therefore I can't talk about it. It's much more you, Justin Bundick, when you travel, what are the innovations you'd like to see? What are the changes you'd like to see as an air traveler?
So I think that there are a couple of areas where the airline industry really needs to focus. I think if you look at as a traveler, if you look at the process of flying, I think there are key points of frustration. Some are in the airport when it comes to security and getting through congestion. And then some are in how, the actual airspace and the delays that causes when it comes to once the plane is in the air. So if you break it down in an overall process, I really hope that the airline industry can work with our governmental partners to really make sure that we have streamlined and made the process of getting into the restricted areas of the airport as seamless and smooth as possible. And I think there's a lot of innovation that can be had in that space. I think once you get into the airport, working with the various airport authorities around the country and the world, to really make sure that we are providing our customers with the most hospitable service inside of the airport. Because there's a lot of touch points that flyers have outside of just interactions with the airline itself, right? So all of these airports and the facilities themselves are all independently owned by a multitude of different authorities, local authorities. And so working with them to make sure that process is as seamless as possible and as customer focused as possible, I think is really important. And I think that airlines need to work and continue to work with the FAA and those in charge of our national airspace, as well as international airspaces, to make sure that we can effectively operate all of our products in the airspace as efficiently as possible. And I think there's a lot of innovation, especially in the data science space, to help support that work and working with our partners to do that.
I have a theory, and I want to hear if what do you think about that theory? And maybe we can work on this theory together. But I have this theory that so what happened is I flew into Chicago, and I sat at O'Hare Airport, like, I don't know, 45 minutes on the tarmac before we could get to the gate. And there were thunderstorms. It was just like everything coming together. And my theory is that, and I fly a lot, so I noticed this. My theory is that if I take the public data available of past arrivals, departures, weather, and where planes come and go from, by airport, by airline, I can give a better prediction of when planes arrive and when planes take off than both the airline and the airport give me, because I think I'm going to combine data from multiple constituents that each have their own rules about what they can share. And I could get to this. Have you seen this on Google Maps on restaurants where it tells you what the wait time is? Yeah. I think we could come up with one generic forecast and just even better. What do you think?
I completely agree. And I think there's a lot of work going on in a lot of different parts of the national airspace and those different groups that help manage that airspace to do just that. You know, we're in an interesting time period where we have several key things happening. The first is that there's more, as you mentioned, there's more data available today in the public domain than's ever been available before. The second is we have an enormous amount of computer capacity and compute capacity available at relatively low cost, more than we've ever had before. And third, those two things are unlocking a set of new algorithms in the artificial intelligence space that we've never been able to utilize effectively before. Because of some of the constraints in both compute capacity and data. And those three things coming together are really starting to unlock accuracy and prediction like we've never seen before. And we're all experiencing it in our day-to-day lives, right? If you look at some of these technology native companies like Google, like Amazon, like some of the other key players in Silicon Valley and on the West Coast, what you're seeing today is the ability to predict at accuracy levels never imagined before. I know for my sake, I can get in my car after leaving the office, and the phone automatically knows that I'm probably driving home, and it's already providing me on a per second basis how long it's going to take me to get there based off of traffic patterns, how many cars are on the road, and all those types of external data sets that are out there today. If you take and then apply that to the national airspace and to our airports and some of the other aspects of travel, we have the opportunity in my profession to really create knowledge that would be really, really beneficial to those that travel, so that they know and can better plan their travel experience, which ultimately will lead to an overall experience increase for the traveling public.
Looks like our coffee chat is coming to a close. Justin, it's so great to see you. Thanks for joining our call. I know we tried this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm glad you pulled it today.
I appreciate that.
Fabulous Friday. And for anybody who missed part of the show or wants to see any past shows, please come and check my YouTube channel. And otherwise, I hope to get to see you again next Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, for another Coffee with Miss Connected and Mr. IoT. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.